She's been a big anchor for me and a big angel for me. So, you know, she deserves those songs to be written for.
For years, the marriage between Richie Sambora and Heather Locklear was seen as a Hollywood ideal. A legendary Bon Jovi guitarist married to a hit television star, living in a luxurious California mansion while raising their daughter Ava. The press often labeled them the golden couple, famous, wealthy, and unusually stable in the unpredictable world of show business. In February 2006, that image collapsed within hours. While on tour, Sambora was stunned to learn that his wife had filed for divorce, not from family, but through entertainment news reports. The shock did more than end a marriage that had lasted over a decade. It raised a deeper question: what truly pushed this once-admired relationship to the brink of collapse? The collapse of his marriage to Heather Locklear. The first major shock, 2006 to 2007. Richie Sambora met Heather Locklear in 1994 through a mutual friend, producer Lisa Christie. The relationship moved quickly. After roughly 7 months of dating, Sambora proposed on December 17, 1994. They were married at a courthouse in New Jersey, followed by a private ceremony in Paris. In 1997, their daughter Ava Elizabeth Sambora was born. Sambora called her a beacon of love. He frequently spoke about his family in interviews and rarely attended public events without mentioning his wife and child. At one point, he stated with certainty, "There isn't a moment that I don't love her." For more than a decade, their marriage appeared unusually stable by Hollywood standards. Sambora toured the world with Bon Jovi, while Locklear maintained a strong television career following the success of Melrose Place. Their annual earnings reached into the millions, and they owned property in some of California's most exclusive neighborhoods. But demanding schedules gradually created distance. Sambora spent weeks, sometimes months, on tour. Locklear worked long production days that often began before sunrise and ended late at night. Their time together shrank. Conversations became increasingly practical, focusing on work logistics and parenting rather than emotional connection. People close to the couple later described the marriage as surrounded by the high walls of Hollywood, a culture where image mattered so much that admitting struggles felt risky. They maintained the appearance of perfection in public. Yet, privately, isolation grew. Everything changed in February 2006. While Sambora was on tour, Locklear filed for divorce in Los Angeles County Superior Court, citing irreconcilable differences. The news broke before Sambora received any direct communication from his family. He first learned about the filing through entertainment media. His initial reaction was disbelief. "It's completely untrue," he said at the time. But the legal documents were real. After more than 11 years, the marriage was officially ending. Friends reported that Sambora appeared emotionally destabilized. He later suggested the experience felt as if everything was taken at once. The foundation of his personal life disappeared almost overnight, and he faced the possibility of no longer seeing his daughter every day. Custody quickly became a critical issue. Sambora fought for joint custody and worked to remain an active father. He adjusted professional commitments to increase his presence at home, a significant shift for a musician still operating at arena tour scale. Yet, before public attention surrounding the divorce had faded, another controversy erupted. Within weeks, tabloids reported that Sambora was dating Denise Richards, a former close friend of Locklear. Headlines framed the situation as a love triangle almost immediately. Sambora's public image shifted from abandoned husband to alleged betrayer. Media pressure intensified. Photographers followed him through airports, restaurants, and recording studios. A reputation built over decades began to fracture under relentless coverage. Looking back, Sambora acknowledged that entering a new relationship so quickly was a mistake. "I made the wrong choice. I was trying to fill a void," he admitted. The situation deepened Locklear's pain and complicated how the public viewed Sambora. He was no longer seen solely as the wounded partner in the divorce. The collapse of his marriage in 2006 was therefore more than the end of a relationship. It marked the beginning of a turbulent personal era, emotional instability, invasive media scrutiny, and decisions driven more by reaction than clarity. It was also the moment Richie Sambora stepped into one of the most difficult chapters of his life, where fame could no longer shield him from deeply personal loss. Addiction and health struggles. The internal spiral, 2007 to 2011. In April 2007, Richie Sambora faced a personal loss that deeply shook his emotional stability. His father, Adam Sambora, died after a battle with lung cancer. The two had been close. Sambora often credited his father for supporting his early music ambitions and driving him to performances when he was still a teenager. The death hit him during an already fragile period. His marriage had just ended. His public image was under scrutiny, and his private life felt increasingly unstable. Friends later observed that Sambora began drinking more heavily in the months that followed. What initially appeared to be coping behavior soon escalated into dependency. By June 2007, Sambora entered a rehabilitation facility in Los Angeles. He did so voluntarily. At the time, representatives described it as a proactive step toward recovery rather than a forced intervention. Sambora himself later spoke candidly about the severity of the situation, calling addiction a ruthless disease. Rehab required him to step away from touring and public appearances for a performer accustomed to constant movement. The sudden stillness was jarring. Treatment forced him to confront not only substance use, but the emotional damage beneath it: grief, divorce, and the pressure of maintaining a global career. Complicating matters further was Heather Locklear's own struggle with mental health and substance issues. In 2008, she sought treatment after reports of severe depression and prescription drug misuse. Although they were no longer married, Sambora remained emotionally affected by her condition. He later admitted, "She was hurting, and I didn't know how to help." The statement reflected a deeper sense of helplessness. He was no longer her partner, yet the mother of his child was in visible distress. Protecting their daughter Ava became an emotional priority. For a short period, recovery appeared successful. Sambora returned to performing and resumed professional commitments. But the stability did not fully hold. In 2011, another crisis emerged. Sambora was hospitalized before the launch of Bon Jovi's Live on the Inside tour after reports described extreme exhaustion and substance-related strain. Official statements characterized it as a need to get himself together, but insiders suggested the situation was serious enough to prevent him from performing. At the time, Sambora was attempting to balance multiple roles: international rock guitarist, recovering addict, and increasingly present single father. The pressure was immense. His absence during parts of Ava's adolescence weighed heavily on him. Touring, treatment, and recovery cycles meant missed school events, reduced daily contact, and long stretches away from home. Those close to him said guilt became a persistent emotional undercurrent. The pattern reflected a broader reality within rock culture. Massive tours demanded physical endurance. Performers often traveled across continents within days, slept irregularly, and lived under constant scrutiny. Fame amplified isolation rather than easing it. For Sambora, success did not eliminate loneliness, it magnified it. Addiction during these years was not simply a personal failing, it was intertwined with grief, public pressure, and the emotional aftermath of a shattered marriage. Each attempt at recovery required him to rebuild stability while still functioning inside a high-stakes industry. This period revealed a difficult truth. The rock star lifestyle that elevated Richie Sambora also exposed him to forces capable of unraveling his personal life. and although he continued to perform at an elite level, the internal strain was quietly steering him toward a decision that would soon shock both his band and millions of fans, leaving Bon Jovi at the peak, choosing family over fame, 2013. By 2013, Bon Jovi remained one of the highest-grossing touring acts in the world. The band launched the Because We Can tour in February. Supporting the album What About Now, tickets sold rapidly across North America and Europe. Industry reports later ranked the tour among the top earners of the year, generating hundreds of millions in revenue. Richie Sambora had been part of that machine for 3 decades. Since joining in 1983, he had co-written many of the band's defining hits and helped shape its sound. His guitar work was inseparable from Bon Jovi's identity. Then, on April 2nd, 2013, just weeks into the tour, Sambora abruptly disappeared from the lineup. No farewell show, no gradual transition. He simply did not take the stage in Calgary, Alberta. The official explanation cited personal issues. Fans were stunned. Many assumed it was temporary, as Sambora had missed isolated performances before. But the absence continued. Replacement guitarist Phil X filled in while the tour moved forward. Behind the scenes, multiple pressures were converging. Heather Locklear's health had become increasingly fragile, and their daughter Ava was entering her teenage years, a period Sambora believed required stronger parental presence. After years of touring, he no longer wanted to be a distant father. At the same time, tensions inside the band had reportedly intensified. Touring at that scale demanded strict discipline, and relationships had grown more transactional over time. In the 2024 Hulu documentary, Thank You, Good Night, The Bon Jovi Story, Sambora reflected on that period with unusual directness. I didn't feel supported. There wasn't much compassion. The statement suggested emotional distance, rather than a single dramatic conflict. John Bon Jovi later described Sambora's exit as feeling like abandonment from a business perspective. The timing was disruptive. Stadium tours require years of planning, and sudden changes create financial risk. For Sambora, however, the calculation had shifted. He chose to step away, rather than relocate for music commitments. He reportedly purchased a home closer to Locklear so he could remain geographically near Ava. Daily life replaced arena schedules. He attended school-related activities, helped manage routines, and prioritized consistency. Friends noted that he tried to be physically present, driving, showing up, participating, tasks impossible during global tours. The contrast was stark. 1 year performing for tens of thousands per night. The next focused on ordinary parental responsibilities, professionally. The cost was enormous. Walking away meant distancing himself from one of the most reliable revenue engines in modern rock. It also meant surrendering a creative platform he had helped build since his 20s. The transition brought a quieter but more isolated phase of life. Public appearances decreased. Speculation increased. Some fans questioned the decision. Others viewed it as an act of maturity. Sambora showed little public regret. He repeatedly emphasized a simple hierarchy. Family came first. Yet the choice carried emotional weight. Leaving Bon Jovi was not just a career adjustment, it was the end of an era that had defined his identity for 30 years. The moment exposed a classic conflict faced by many high-profile performers: the collision between global fame and private responsibility. For Richie Sambora, stepping away from the stage was not a retreat from music. It was a declaration that success meant little if it cost him his role as a father. Heather Locklear's crisis. Sambora's quiet support, 2018. In 2018, Heather Locklear's long-running struggles with mental health and substance abuse reached a public breaking point. Across several months, authorities responded to multiple incidents at her California home. She was arrested following reports of domestic disturbance and later faced charges related to assaulting a police officer. The headlines were relentless. Soon after, Locklear was hospitalized following a suspected overdose. Emergency services were reportedly called after fears that she might harm herself. The pattern suggested a dangerous escalation. Years of depression, addiction, and emotional instability had converged into a full-scale crisis. Although Richie Sambora had been divorced from Locklear for more than a decade, he did not distance himself. Instead, he stepped in quietly. Sources close to the family indicated that Sambora helped coordinate medical support, ensuring she had access to doctors and treatment when the situation became critical. His involvement was largely private, with few public statements. When he did speak, his message was simple: "I will always be there for Heather, and especially for Ava." The emphasis reflected his primary concern. Protecting their daughter from emotional fallout became a guiding priority. Ava, then a young adult, had grown up witnessing cycles of instability. Sambora later expressed deep pride in her resilience, noting that she had shown unusual strength under pressure. One gesture stood out. Sambora, a licensed pilot, once flew an aircraft bearing Locklear's initials, a subtle, symbolic act interpreted by some as a message of enduring care rather than romance. It was not about rekindling a relationship. It was about refusing to abandon someone who remained family in a deeper sense. His actions revealed a form of loyalty not defined by legal obligation. Divorce had ended the marriage, but it had not erased shared history or parental responsibility. The episode also underscored a broader reality about Hollywood. Public images often demand perfection, yet the pressure beneath that expectation can fracture even the most admired lives. Locklear had once represented television success and glamour. Now her struggles played out in real time before a global audience. For Sambora, the crisis was another reminder that fame offers no immunity from suffering. His support during this period suggested emotional growth, a shift from the reactive decisions of earlier years toward steadier compassion. The marriage had ended long ago. The connection had not, and in choosing presence over distance, Sambora demonstrated that some forms of love evolve rather than disappear, especially when a child's well-being binds two lives together long after romance is gone. Long-term consequences and the path to recovery. In the years following repeated personal crises, Richie Sambora made a deliberate choice. He stopped explaining his private life to the media. While headlines often portrayed him as distant or emotionally detached, those close to him suggested the silence was intentional. Speaking publicly risked intensifying scrutiny on Heather Locklear and their daughter Ava, something he refused to do. The strategy came with a cost. Without his voice shaping the narrative, speculation filled the gap. Yet Sambora appeared willing to accept misunderstanding if it meant protecting his family. Gradually, his lifestyle shifted. The constant motion of arena tours gave way to a more measured routine. He focused on maintaining sobriety, protecting his health, and staying present for Ava. Friends described him as more introspective than in earlier decades, less driven by visibility, more grounded in personal stability. For many years, he avoided revisiting the divorce in detail. But in his mid-60s, Sambora began speaking with greater clarity about the past. One statement stood out for its bluntness. "I didn't leave Heather. She left me." The remark was not framed as blame. Instead, he suggested the separation may have been necessary for her survival, a way for her to breathe during a period when their marriage had become emotionally suffocating. When discussing his 2013 departure from Bon Jovi, Sambora showed little regret. He acknowledged the emotional loss, the end of a brotherhood forged over 30 years, but remained firm about the priority behind his decision. Family came first. Still, reflection brought perspective. The rock star life that once symbolized freedom had often demanded psychological endurance few people recognized. Fame created opportunity, but it also amplified loneliness, addiction, fractured relationships, and internal conflicts became the hidden cost of success. Recovery, for Sambora, did not mean erasing the past. It meant learning how to live alongside it without being controlled by it. His story reveals an early but enduring lesson. Extraordinary achievement does not guarantee peace. Sometimes the very life people admire requires sacrifices invisible from the outside, and the price of fame is often paid in private. Conclusion: Richie Sambora's life story is not defined by a single dramatic collapse, but by a series of deeply personal trials. The sudden end of his marriage shattered the stability he once relied on. Addiction tested his physical and emotional limits. Walking away from Bon Jovi forced him to surrender a career peak few artists ever reach. Even after divorce, he chose to stand quietly beside Heather Locklear during her darkest moments. Together, these experiences shaped a version of Sambora far removed from the carefree rock star image. A man who learned sacrifice often happens out of public view. His journey offers a clear warning about the hidden cost of fame. Success can provide wealth, recognition, and influence, yet it cannot shield anyone from grief, loneliness, or emotional fracture. The same spotlight that elevates a career can intensify personal struggles. And yet, Sambora's story is not ultimately about collapse. It is about recovery. At the center of that recovery stands his daughter, Ava. He has often treated fatherhood not as a secondary role, but as the grounding force that kept him connected to reality. In many ways, she became what he once described as a tether to something real, a reminder of who he was beyond stages, tours, and headlines. Now, in his mid-60s, Sambora appears less concerned with public perception and more focused on living deliberately. He continues to make music on his own terms, values his health, and remains present in his daughter's life. When reflecting on the past, he rarely speaks with bitterness. Instead, there is acceptance, even gratitude, for the difficult road that reshaped his priorities. If his life suggests anything, it is this: regret is not always the final destination of hardship. Sometimes adversity clarifies what truly matters. It leaves us with a quiet question. If faced with similar loss, would we choose status, or would we step back to protect the people we love? Because Sambora's story ultimately reminds us that the most enduring forms of love are rarely loud. They are steady, often unseen, and powerful enough to guide a person through collapse toward renewal.